Greetings and welcome back to the show, World War II Books Where to Start. I'm your host, Felix Kirsten, international man of mystery and massage therapist to the stars of the Third Reich. Today we're going to talk about some biographies. And we're going to kick it off with Heinrich Himmler, one of my customers. By Manville and Frank. This is very early, from 1965. And being very early in the process, it's got some probably what I would call factual errors and whoopsies due to the lack of overall material. And they're just trying to do a quick hit and run, not a hit job, but a quick hit and run bio, not intended to be exhaustive by any means. And I think for the most part, it holds up decently. It's not great, but it holds up decently. They're reliant on Schacht and Schellenberg's memoirs for a lot of the material, and that is problematic, of course. Schellenberg especially is not going to be fair, square, and honest with everything concerning anybody in the Third Reich, unless it's disparaging the guys they're asking about so that he looks better and doesn't get dead at Nuremberg or afterwards or rearrested, whatever. He's going to be disingenuous. Plus, he was an intelligence guy. He's lying by nature, right? That's what they do. They obfuscate, they confuse, they muddy the picture. So relying on Schacht and Schellenberg's problematic for their two primary sources, but that was a state of the art and what they had to work with in the early 60s, I guess, and that's what they did. So within those confines and liabilities, it's still a pretty interesting bio. Doesn't linger too long in the childhood, drama of mommy and daddy issues too much. Does mention his desire to be in the Great War and being frustrated by that, and the fact that he had typhoid fever and something else debilitating in the barracks there when he was a cadet, late Great War period, and that may have contributed to his physical fragility and his medical problems later on during the war, during World War II, that exacerbated his nervous state and probably his exhaustion carrying so many offices and having to be so many places on short notice for so much of the duties he took upon himself might have contributed to that. But that's just kind of mentioned in passing too. There's a little incident during the Anschluss with Austria where they're flying to Austria in a plane, Himmler and all his lackeys, shall we say, and Himmler's kind of casually leaning against the aircraft's door, which is unlatched and could have popped open at any time, and somebody yanks him out of the way and latches the thing. Just think, that would have been a rather ignominious end to the most feared man in the Third Reich before he really and properly got started. One of history's missed opportunities, shall we say. Of course, that would have given rise to Heinrich right away. It might have been worse. Who knows? Let's see here. Oh yeah. So what I really carried away from this, not really being an in-depth bios, more or less incidents and little vignettes. So touring Russia, the occupied areas in Minsk, he discovers two little blonde boys that have been orphaned, and he forcibly adopts them on the spot and lugs them around the Third Reich for a while before he dumps them on a school when he got bored with them, kind of like a couple puppies he picked up along the way, and they amuse him for a while, but when they get tedious and onerous, he just kind of ditches them. Typical Himmler behavior, right? Just kind of fascinations of the moment. It's kind of a bizarre thing. I don't think I've seen it anywhere else. These two are heavy on the medical experiments, which is good for a bio of Himmler to focus on, and the evil of the Third Reich, bringing it out. Doesn't do much to get at his anti-Semitism and its origins and roots, and why he carried on with such dispassionate fervor about it. So there's something lacking there. Just his cold-blooded, shall we say, detached bureaucracy methods of mass murder. It's not really remarked upon either. There's going to be a lot of late war focus on the secret negotiations and the attempt to trade Jews for military equipment, I think, is included in there. So overall, okay. 3 stars. as an intro to Himmler, if you've never read a bio of him before, I think it's a good starting point. I think there are some missed facts and some misstated things. Like you said, Skorzeny was brought into Berlin to help settle the 20th July plot. I don't remember that. It's always the other guy, Major Raymer, that's the big boy in that operation. Skorzeny could have been there, but I don't recall it. There's this moment about the court of honor with Fritsch and SS men outside the courtroom meditating to try to influence the judge's ruling. Kind of bizarre. Supposedly Himmler brought in some kind of, I don't know, a seance or some kind of fortune teller to try to divine Mussolini's location after he had been abducted. Just kind of bizarre. I could see him doing it, and I wish they had these two had really focused on the occult aspect. How much did he really dig into the occult, and was he actually doing seances and having these, little nocturnal meetings where they're chanting things and drawing pentagrams on the floor? It's always been the legend of the Third Reich that he was into the occult like this full time, but I've never seen anyone really devote a number of pages to it, and these guys missed an opportunity here too to really put that one to rest, shall we say, early on. It's just mentioned here and there. I wish they really dug their boots in and chased that detail down. I think that would have been interesting. He goes on about Himmler's confessions to myself, Felix Kirsten, and the course of the war and the future of Germany and peasant farmers and the value of bigamy after the war because of the decimation of the male population of Germany. Then he goes on to the military stuff when Himmler was put in charge of armies, and I think they kind of bungled that here, kind of bad. Could have done a lot better. I just don't think they had access to the sources or were conversant with military writing to throw that into a biography. Just doesn't carry well. Some questions though: Did Himmler really sign orders not to destroy the Hague and open up the dams on the Zuiderzee? I don't know. It's probably been mentioned in a general history somewhere along the line. I've just forgotten that small detail. I just don't know that he was involved in that. It's always about his secret negotiations to try to open up the Western Front and resist the Bolsheviks, right? So, kind of interesting questions there. This would have countermanded Hitler's orders, right? So, did it happen? Don't know. And did he really tell the Belsen commandant not to kill any more Jews and to put the typhus epidemic down? Was he really still issuing orders at that late a date instead of trying to seal his own escape route to skedaddle when he needed to? Was he really doing that? That's again something that's been lost in my memory. Read so much about the war that I don't remember that particular detail, so I'm not quite on board with that. I don't know. So overall, it's a 3 stars. I know I'm making this kind of like a lukewarm endorsement, but it's valuable as an opening assessment of Himmler. So that's Heinrich Himmler by Manville and Frank. All right, next up is Goring, Hitler's Iron Knight by Richard Overy. And this is from 2012, 241 pages, main body. It's a brief one. But it's dense within that 241 pages. Don't expect this to be an easy breezy. And it's not a stem to stern bio. It's more about his empire that he constructed within the Third Reich, his feudal empire. His territory, his turf, and how he gained and attained and maintained and aggrandized power. So you got to love committee work here, because he was on the board of this, that, and the other thing. He was the chairman of this, that, and the other committee. And that's his pathway to power once he lost control of the police to Himmler. He wants to be the industrial giant. He wants to be the military giant. And he wants to pull the strings from behind the curtains. He's also got the Forschungsamt under his command, although that's really not examined here. It's not really the focus. The focus is industrial, and gaining more and more control of German industrial output, focused towards the military procurement system and munitions production, taking over interest, controlling interest in foreign industrial firms as well to expand his power base and his wealth. He was not shy about accumulating wealth at all. And it was one of his passions, shall we say. So this is dry. This is utterly intricate with committee meetings and maneuverings by various people to circumvent him, shortchange him, kneecap him, and how he outmaneuvered them. And his faults and foibles along the way, how he bungled this or bungled that, and spread himself too thin, shall we say, in acquiring all this power, where he had so many things to control he couldn't possibly keep on top of everything, plus be the second man in the Reich politically, right, and attend to all his state functions, as well as help direct the war when it came. It was just too much on his plate for any one man to handle. Because here again, he's not a big delegator, and you can kind of sense that would be an automatic, right? He's got to be in charge of everything all the time. He doesn't like anybody with authority under him able to make independent decisions without a detailed review by him. So everything's got to go through him, and it's kind of reflective of the Hitler personality too. He had to control everything all the time, down to really silly minor details that absorbed far too much of his time. So it's kind of a parallel thing, a mirror image of one person trying to do way too much and untrustworthy to delegate power to anyone else for fear of being betrayed, I guess would be the common phrase there, betrayed. They were always afraid of the treason within their own system that they had created. So it's a difficult read at 241 pages. It really is. It took me quite a few sessions to get through it, because there's some chapters with the density here that will put you to sleep. You gotta kind of put the toothpicks in the eyes sometimes to keep yourself awake. Worthwhile read if you want to know the methods and operations of the Goring Empire within the empire kind of thing, but not valuable as a stem to stern examination of his life. It's his personal life is just a tiny slice at the beginning of the book. Background, parents, that's it. Yeah. So it doesn't really even cover his art stealing. So if you're interested in the theft of all the art from Europe, that's not there. It's really concerned with his industrial machinations, shall we say. So that's with a tepid recommendation, 3 stars for what it is, but don't expect too much out of it. And I have excoriated Mr. Richard Overy in a different video about his Why the Allies Won. But for a counterpoint to this is decently done. Although, again, I'm never going to say he's a genius of World War II writing. That's Goering, Hitler's Iron Knight by Richard Overy. And then to finish up today, Canaris, Hitler's Master Spy by Heinz Hona from 76. This is a dense one, 599 pages, main body. And it's quite an adventure. It's a saga. It's very well done. Heinz Hona, most famous for his early book, Order of the Death's Head, which I read way back in high school, and I haven't touched it since. So I can't remember. I remember the writing style being very, very over the top, dramatic and emotional, but that's all I remember. That's the study of the SS and the police empire, Gestapo included. He's a Gestapo expert. And he's going to give you the table of organization of the police apparatus within the Third Reich, as well as the Abwehr's dense structuring here. He's got 2 or 3 flow charts in here. So if you really want to know who reported who and who was subordinate to what, it's repeated there a couple times throughout the book. So it's very confusing. There's so many departments and so many overlapping agencies, which is typical of the Third Reich's bureaucracy, right? That you kind of get lost in the sauce to try to straighten the lines of authority out. What he does well here is just about everything, though. Early life, adventures in World War I, the escape from South America, service aboard the cruisers, his early introduction to espionage by kind of having to finagle his way out of South America, giving him a taste for the adventurous life, the man in the overcoat, right? Learning Spanish thoroughly, And coming back to Germany, then he's eventually U-boat commander in the Mediterranean, previously having posted to get supplies to the U-boats based in the Mediterranean. Quite an adventure, just in his early life. And then the immediately post-war Germany situation with Cap Putsch and his involvement in that, and conniving and scheming to get an authoritarian government into Berlin and avoid the dreaded Weimar Republic, and how that all kind of fell apart. He engineered the escape of a guy that was going to be put on trial for the Cap Putsch. Just kind of walks in and says, "I'm Captain so-and-so, I need this guy, we got to interrogate him somewhere else," and then walk out. It's kind of like stuff from a spy movie you never expect to work, but in the confusion and unorganized aspect of Berlin immediately post-war, you can see it happening. Very interesting. The murders of Rosa Luxemburg and her the other dude that was with her, that's covered, and Canaris' part in that is covered well. So he's got quite a history behind him before anything really gets going. Interwar years, he's back in the Navy. His conniving and intelligence gathering stuff is kind of chopped out from under him after some efforts to get Navy contracts to build submarines in Spain under wraps to keep their technology going and up to date. Interesting little sidelight there. Eventually becomes the captain of one of the few battleships the Germans were allowed to keep. He's kind of put on ice there for a couple of years because his superiors don't really trust him. Eric Rader does not trust him at all, doesn't like him, knows he's a scallywag and a little worm sneaking around behind everyone's back, and does not trust him as far as he can throw him. So there's that interesting aspect. And he's, during the Weimar years, he's kind of booted up to be the leader of the Abwehr kind of by default. He's the only one with experience enough to take over once I think it was Patzig resigns to retire. He kind of takes over by default because no one else is that conversant with Secret Service stuff and spy stuff within the military establishment, because the Abwehr is subordinate to the army, to be able to handle the complexity of the situation. So that he kind of got there by whoopsie. But once in, he's kind of forgotten about and trusted implicitly by everybody else as a master spy. He kind of gets this automatic ambiance around him that people believe he really is a super spy. He take care of counterintelligence and the big focus of saboteurs against German industrial plants as they're trying to regain their industry and their economy in the post or interwar years. And that obsession continued from 33 to 39 and the run up to the Second War. Kind of an interesting focus. They're really paranoid about internal treason, and foreign nationals were tracked very carefully. Canaris cuts out his own empire, as everybody else did, of course, in this milieu. The border police were his, and the Brandenburger Division started out as a battalion for special ops. He kind of pioneered that idea and made it what it was, and so successful for the German army in Poland that it expanded to a battalion, then almost a regiment, and then nearly a division by the time it reaches full force. But of course, with its notoriety and its effectiveness, that gets cut out from under his control, and eventually he loses all command of it. But it's kind of, it builds his empire really differently and slowly, and not with any overriding evil genius purpose. It's just grabbing power here and there because he thinks it's vital to Germany's security. He's a reactionary monarchist like everybody else. The old school naval officers, they're all longing for the return of the monarchy. That's never going to happen. He goes happily along with the Hitler regime, though, because it's authoritarian, decisive, and will restore order to the German nation and cut out all of Weimar silliness and democracy talk, right? Goes along with it willingly. Even with what he, with his semi-regular meetings with Hitler, recognizes are his demonstrable faults and weirdness of personality. Still doesn't think to put the brakes on anywhere or think maybe this is a bad idea. He's in love with Spain. He helps with the Spanish Civil War and contributes to the German that decision to help the Spanish in the Civil War, not as a demonstration of military preparedness for their own war, but as a thing in itself. He's really interested in again, another reactionary obsession is defeating Bolshevism. He believes in Spain. He's in love with the country. He's got this romantic vision of it. He likes to drive around incognito in Spain, running down his contacts. This is the head of the Abwehr in the field doing this, going from station to station and being in the mix there. Very much a daring do spy undercover when he needs to like pull back and be the actual head of the Abwehr in his office. Just kind of a weird kind of mix there of good vision, but lacking some judgment here and there. And that's going to continue on and on, the lack of judgment and assessment for a man who's supposed to be an intelligence mastermind. While this is not really a focus of the Abwehr's operations at all, it's strictly a biography of Canaris. So their faults and foibles during the war are kind of left mostly to the side. Although there's the longest recapitulation of the operations is how Canaris is eventually unmasked as having a part in the desire to remove Hitler. He had been involved in a couple of post-war or pre-war attempts by the resistance to bring down Hitler when they thought it was possible. But once they go to war, Canaris pulls back from that aspect and that decision and says, well, we're stuck with him. We're on the cart. We got to ride the cart over the cliff. No matter what happens, what he says is what we do. And he sticks to that until 1944, until he's drawn back into it reluctantly. He's got a cast of characters he's assembled around him that are resistant to Hitler's authority and want to overturn the regime. And Canaris has sometimes provided a safe haven for them there. Even though he knows their leans, he doesn't want any part of it. It's such a contradiction in terms that it's really just kind of wild and fascinating. And his subordinate that keeps these files, the detailed files and all the information, all the plans that we're going to go into overthrowing Hitler in the pre-war period, Canaris says, destroy those, make sure you get rid of them, burn them, but this guy locks them away in the safe. Instead, classic mistake of bureaucracy, we can't destroy all the notes we made. I put a lot of work into this. And eventually they're discovered at Zossen in a safe, and that's what brings about Canaris' final downfall and imprisonment. And he's murdered at Flossenburg as an afterthought in the dying days of the regime. After a mock trial, blah blah blah. And the question of the hour is, what did he really believe in, of course? And the answer to that is, I really can't think he believed in anything except the game was what mattered to him. It was really the game. Playing the game mattered to him. He became debilitated and worn out and stressed out during the war, like a lot of these guys did. Not really on board with it anymore, and knowing that they were probably going to be defeated, and can't believe it's going to happen again. So he kind of loses control of all the threads, gets really despondent at times, and not in control of what's going on. It leads to sloppiness. At one point, he's dismissed for a while by Hitler or suspended before being brought back by necessity. But with the encroachment of the SS, it's a matter of time until he loses control of the Abwehr, and he kind of lets it go to hell all by itself. He doesn't really put up too much of a fight. He's only spurred to save his own skin. When that comes around, he's of course the self-interest. He's very interested in saving his own skin, and goes down fighting with the admonition, "Long live Germany! I was not a traitor." Yada yada yada, like they all did. So kind of a tragic, just kind of bizarre life in a sense. Really bizarre. This is the mastermind we've all been. It's kind of legendary that Canaris was a master spider, spinning his web, and it just turns out he's just kind of blundering along here and there. Good with the details, but overall mission not so much on track. So Heinz Hohne really pulls it off the well together. There's like 200 to 400 notations in any one chapter. The guy really did the work. And having chased down a lot of these notes, they are primarily from German documents and German magazine articles and German sources generally. So there's no real tidbits to be gotten by chasing footnotes. I just want to point out the depth of the research here. It's amazing. Can't fault them for that. 5 stars all the way. Not a quick read. It's a long, slow burn. It's very good. Highly recommended. Canaris, Hitler's Master Spy, Heinz Hohne. And that will wrap it up today for biographies. Hope you found one of these you like, or 2 of these that you want to investigate and discover on your own. And until next time, Happy reading.